Yeah, that's the one. Okay, let me get it together, Mr. Calvin.
She got a 19.
You need pink.
Yeah.
You want blue one or black?
I'm good.
Doesn't
I'm
matter.
good with what you gave me. Right now.
Okay, high five. I ain't tripping, and this is our utilization piece. I need to go back.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I sent the new one to company Lambert. Yeah, I seen one person in. I'm also live streaming YouTube, so if they want to try to just look up Flint School Board. I got two people in there now, so they're trickling and a little bit. Yeah, but they had a link on there preemptively, but that was last week's link. So I sent them a new one this morning, but the person at Lambert replied, so.
This is the sign.
YouTube should be working. It worked okay for 15 minutes. I had it running last week before we did have the meeting, you know, 'cause I started a little early.
Yeah, we late. Okay. Where am I would like to call the Flint Board of Education regular. The time is 6:32. Board members, as I call your name, please reply. Present for the public record, Vice President Green.
Present.
Secretary McNeil.
Present.
Treasurer McIntyre is not with us today. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Walker
Present.
is present. Board Trustee Del Morone.
Present.
Board Trustee Gilbert.
Present.
And myself, we're present. Before we begin, I would like to hold a moment of silence for the entire Oxford community as they continue to process the tragedy that occurred last month. So can you give us a minute, Stephen, for a moment of silence? Thank you. Thank you. At this time, I would like for the public to stand and join us as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you, and we will continue with the district's mission statement. It is the mission of the Flint District to develop a community of learners.
School outcomes by motivating and empowering men to be engaged fathers. So pleased to let you know that Potter's community education team continues to plan creative packed time activities and events. Packed time events are parent and child time together activities. By collaborating with Crim Sports, the community school director, Jesse McGraw, leveraged additional funding to purchase roller skates for the scholars and parents. With this new equipment, families can enjoy family skating events planned on Saturdays beginning in January. Thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to share this information with you.
Thank you, Ms. Down. And our last public speaker is Mr. Arthur Woodson. Mr. Woodson, please.
Hello. I'm glad Dr. Sullivan was here to give me some clarity on the hydrant stations. My issue is this. We were and still are in a crisis, a water crisis. We should not be spending money to have anything tested, even though this is Eric Oswald stated on the communication meeting that we have on Thursdays that our superintendent prior to our superintendent now said that he didn't want the school district tested by the state. It was MDEQ at the time. Eric Oswald is the director for Eagle. So he's supposed to got in touch with the superintendent now and supposed to have been coming here to speak to us on why the state isn't testing the school water. In the meetings that I have with EPA and Eagle and all them, I ask, by our schools being 1921, 1950, 1960, our infrastructure is old. I ain't never see them digging up any pipes or changing any pipes in the school. And if we have to have a filter, not just for dehydration systems or hydration systems, but inside the bathrooms also, because there's some kids that will cup their hands and drink out of the faucets in the bathroom. For Eric Oswald not to be here and Eagle not to be here, which they said they would be, is highly upsetting to me. We have been getting shafted. They send money here for nurses, school aides. I would really like to know if we spent any money out of the general fund positions right there. And if we did, how long have we been spending money on school aides and nurses and behavioral counselors? The Flint Water Declaration, that money that came in to GISD supposed to pay for those positions. We have to put ourselves in position because Arch Environmental, I trust them because Dr. Laura Sullivan said she trusts them and they came highly recommended, and I can trust what Dr. Laura Sullivan said. But after they leave, who's going to be testing the whole school after that? We have to get Eagle here and tell them that it's their duty, Governor Whitmer, who ran on helping Flint water crisis victims, to come in here and check our water. If our pipes needs changing, y'all need to pay for it because you are the ones that destroyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodson. At this time, I'll call upon Ms. Domprey to present Plant Moran for audit presentations to the board.
So at this time, I have Donna Hansen and Holly Stefanski from Plant Moran. They're going to give us a presentation related to our audit.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Donna Hansen. Serve as the colleague partner on the audit of Flint schools. With me is Holly Stefanski. She's the senior manager, and she has been involved in the school audit for several years as our technical expert on the federal program side for the firm as well. You should have 3 deliverable items, the basic financial statements, the single audit report. This report details the federal grants the district received, and correspondence to the board, or the report to the board, which is the end of audit correspondence. I'd like to recap the basic financial statements. We have issued an unmodified opinion. This means that the financial statements of the district are fairly stated, are materially correct, and can be relied upon. The district's audited financial statements have been submitted to the Michigan Department of Education. Also included is the federal audit report, in which we have already also issued an unmodified opinion. There were 2 major programs that were tested in the audit this year, or the June 30th, 2021 year. This would be the Education Stabilization Funds, or the ESSER funds, that grant, as well as Title I. There was a significant amount, as you know, of federal funds deployed to school districts in the state of Michigan in response to the pandemic. It would include the ESSER funds, which we did test, but in addition, the district received coronavirus relief funds as well. And there are, additional grant dollars that will be required by the district to be spent over the next couple of years. To remind all of our school district clients that we work with that this is non-recurring funding, and the planning and strategic use of these dollars on allowable costs is really key to fully utilizing the dollars in the time frame that you're allotted. Holly will cover a slide that details those grant dollars as well. And finally, with the correspondence to the Board of Education, there's a lot of content in this correspondence. A portion of it is required communication to the board. Included in this section, just want to point you to, there's a reference to 2 findings that were noted, which are actually included in your single audit report. As well as included there is best practice and recommendations, and a comprehensive informational section which speaks to school finance in the state of Michigan. And I'm going to turn it over to Holly. She's going to cover the overview of the general fund in particular, which is the primary operating fund of the district. Holly?
Thanks, Donna. All right. So just going to go through a few slides, and as we talk about these, as Donna mentioned, unless otherwise noted, these all pertain to the district's general fund, and for the year ended June 30 of 21, so we're kind of looking at historical look back of last school year. So this first slide that's on the screen here is the balance sheet of the district, or of the general fund, and assets totaled $47.1 million at June 30 of 21. Which is about $24.2 million more than the assets of $22.9 million over the prior year. And this increase was really just driven by an increase in amounts that are due from other governmental units, largely related to the significant federal grant collections that Donna mentioned. There's been a significant influx of those federal funds, so that's why we see the increase there. Your liabilities and deferred inflows, consisting of amounts due from third parties, as well as unavailable and unearned revenue, increased by roughly $8.7 million in 2021. The majority of this increase related to an increase in revenue that was either not available or not yet earned as of the end of the year, and therefore wasn't eligible to be recognized during the school year, but will during the current school year ending in 22. Moving on to the next slide, we're now looking at a comparison of the budgeted and actual general fund revenues and expenditures for the year. So revenue totaled $80.9 million, which was about $7.1 million less than the $88 million included in the final approved budget. Actual expenditures totaled $65.4 million, which was $5.7 million less than the $71.1 million in the final budget. Your fund balance increased by about $15.4 million in 2021 to approximately $27.3. This increase was primarily driven by lower general fund debt service requirements and a reduction in operating expenditures. So as mentioned previously, revenue of the general fund totaled about $80.9 million in 2021. And this slide here shows the total revenue broken down into the major sources from which it was derived. About 46% of your funding this year comes from state sources, the majority of which is dependent upon enrollment levels, which we'll take a look at on a slide in a few minutes. Federal grants this year accounted for approximately 42% of revenue. As federal revenue did increase over the prior year levels, again, as a result of the influx of those funds coming in from response to the pandemic, and we're going to take a closer look at that on the next slide as well. Graph kind of try to break it down and explain what all the different pieces are. So the individual COVID-related grants are listed out known total award amount. So that's the total amount that the district's been awarded as of today, or as of June 30 of 21. So of course, since then, there's likely been or has been more spent, but that just shows what has been incurred through the date of the audit. For the hand column there, so you can kind of get an idea of when the funds for each of the awards must be, which is noted on the bottom of the slide there, and that just relates to MDE not having finalized the final dates for which those funds can be spent, but it should be somewhere closer related to recurring, or what sometimes you hear referred to as legacy grants. So that would be your Title I, your other title grants, your special education funding, your child nutrition, those type of grants. And then 52% of your expenditures during the year related to the emergency type funds. So as Donna mentioned, why important is, it's obviously a significant benefit, but planning and utilization of how to spend these funds becomes all the more important and challenging because you have to plan for future, make sure that it's not ultimately burdening the district when it comes to long-term cost associated with how you're utilizing those funds currently. So, of course, good thing that will burden in terms of planning and administration of those funds. So this graph represents distribution of your 2021 general fund expenditures by function, which totaled $0.4 million. About 65% was spent in the classroom on instruction or instructional support related activities, and other significant areas of expense at 12%, central support at 8%, and general school and business administration services at 7%. So this is 2021 general fund expenditures, but now broken down by object rather by function. So on the previous slide, we were looking at the activities on which the funds were spent, and here we're really looking at the type of service in those particular funds. So being a service-driven organization, vast majority of operating resources of the district are spent on personnel-related expenditures. On a combined basis, salaries, retirement costs, and outlay accounted for about 54% of all general fund expenditures during 2021. Spending on purchase services accounted for about 30%, supplies were about 13%, debt service 2%, and the remaining 1% related to supplies and other miscellaneous expenses. Vision of where the declining revenues and expenditures until we get to the more recent year where we can kind of see that there was an improvement over the past year and a half. So revenue inclusive of other financing sources is represented by the blue line, about $147.8 million in fiscal year ended 2011 to around $80.9 million today, exclusive of debt proceeds where those might have been applicable. So really what that's showing is that your revenue has really nearly been cut in half over the last 10-year period. And as you can see by taking a look at the other line on the graph, expenditures have also declined over this period from about $153.1 million in 2011 to about $64.4 million in 2021.